Yeah, she's there now. Follows is not so because you cannot posit the definition of correct effect sign. Jakob. Posit the definition of correct effect sign.
That which is the three effect modes.
That which is the three effect modes. Follows that's the definition of correct effect sign.
X.
Yeah. I don't know how much you can do with that. So you have to, I mean, that's like just a shorthand thing, but I don't know how much you can really explain that. So then it follows it is not because you cannot posit the definition of correct effect sign in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke. Jakob.
Why?
Posit it.
On the one hand, there is a common base of being held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke, and being the cause of smoke. And also, it is three modes in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke.
Yeah, that's a bit of a long one. I noticed you didn't try to say it from memory.
Not yet.
Jakob, not yet. Yeah, but I don't think there's that much to it, you know. I mean, it sounds long, but the essence of it isn't so difficult to grasp, I don't think. Okay, it's got to be a correct sign. So it's got to be three modes in the proof of fire and the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke. And then you've got to have this the link up between the predicate of the probandum, explicit predicate of the probandum, and the sign. So in a correct effect sign, what's that link up going to be? Yeah, well, you're telling the presence of the cause by the sign of the effect. So that's pretty legitimate, you know, because the smoke exists and, you know, fire must exist, type of thing. So that's sort of fairly simple, isn't it? But in the technical language, so they've got to have a common base. Common base of what? You know, just assure yourself that there is this effect and cause relationship. So we say there's got to be a common base then. Common base of what? Something being the explicit predicate of the probandum and something being the sign. So it's just not a common locus of those two, but it's common locus of being held as the explicit predicate of the probandum. So somebody's got to hold it as the explicit predicate of the probandum, as always. You know, there's got to be some person involved in all these signs. It's not just going to be the explicit predicate for the probandum, but somebody, you know, considering it as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of that, in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by their sign smoke, and being the cause of smoke. Yeah, so if smoke's going to be an effect, then something in the explicit predicate of the probandum's going to be the cause of that effect. And it says common base of being the explicit predicate for the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign of smoke and being the cause of smoke. So, I mean, one possibility why they're taking that cautious approach. I mean, what about the explicit predicate of the probandum itself? The subject, the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke. Permanent or impermanent? Jan.
The fire exists.
Now, is it put that subject, the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke? Permanent or impermanent?
I would say it is Probably permanent, because it's, I mean, everything that is it is impermanent, but maybe it's like an isolate or something. So probably I would guess permanent.
Yes, I think that's one thing to be aware of. You think, oh, the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of sound, smoke is exists, and the proof of fire is existent on the smoky pass. Oh well, they're talking about fire there. Okay, well, fire is impermanent as you like, but the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass, that is permanent. Yeah. It's like the definition of functioning thing is permanent. Whatever is it, able to perform function, that's impermanent. But the definition of functioning thing itself is permanent. So it's like that. So that's a category. So that's permanent. So that's not going to be, that's not going to have it. That's not a cause. That's not an effect. So that's not what we're talking about. But that which is something which is the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke, and is the cause of smoke. So you've got something which is the explicit predicate of the probandum. Don't say the explicit predicate of the probandum in that sign itself is the cause of smoke. You see, because that's you're just saying something permanent is the cause of smoke, which is that's not possible. So don't think like that. Something which is the common base, something which is the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke and being the cause of smoke. So what are we going to posit then, Jan? What is that thing that is the common base?
Existence of fire.
Subject, the existence of fire. Is that a cause?
No, okay, I'll backtrack and just say fire.
Yeah, that's what I want to point out, because somebody, if it is the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of smoke is fire is existing on the smoky pass, is it necessarily impermanent? Yeah, so we think, well, the one that they're talking about is fire, because that's the one that is the explicit predicate of the probandum and it is a cause of smoke. Yeah, no quarrel there. But if it is the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of the existence of fire on a smoky pass, is it necessarily impermanent? So I was looking for some confirmation of this, my thinking there, but I didn't find one particularly. So what do you think, Anila? Are you there, Anila? Are you with us? Slovakia?
Yes. Yeah.
What would you say if it is the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of fire on the smoky pass, the existence of fire on the smoky pass? Would you say that it is necessarily impermanent?
No.
Posit your example. It is the explicit predicate of the probandum, or is held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire on the smoky pass by the sign smoke, and it's not impermanent.
Existence of fire.
The existence of fire, yeah. So I think that's legitimate to say that is the explicit predicate of the probandum and the proof of that. But then you can't use that and claim it's all part of the correct effect sign. No, because the correct effect sign, you've got to choose something which is a cause of smoke, and the existence of fire is not the cause of smoke. And I think if I remember, I haven't got confirmation of this, but then you can say the predicate is also the existence of, the sign is also the existence of smoke can be claimed to be the sign. Do you remember being taught that, Anila?
Yes.
So then if you take the permanent one, which is the explicit predicate of the probandum, i.e. existence of fire, and the permanent one, which is the sign, which is the existence of smoke, then you can say it's what, a correct nature sign?
Yeah, there are debates on it, but it's not the correct nature sign.
It's not.
No.
It's not a correct sign.
I can't remember why, but it's not. Because it still somehow fulfills the definition of correct effect sign. The whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and it can't be both, sort of thing. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, kind of point to remember. So once it can be in the correct effect sign category, once there is a common base of being held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of the existence of fire and the smoke passed by the sign smoke, and being the cause of smoke. Once there is a common locus, which we can posit, which is fire, then that sign is a correct effect sign, even though you can posit something which is permanent and as the explicit predicate of the probandum, and something permanent which is the sign. And if you think about it, you maybe decide that yes, those two have the kind of relationship that makes something a correct nature sign. But once the fact there's a cause, that the fire is like the predicate of the probandum and is the cause of the effect, then the cause of the sign, then that kind of qualifies it as an effect sign. That overrules everything else, perhaps. Is that what you mean, Anila? Did you hear me, Anila? She's gone silent now.
No, I didn't listen very well, Gisela, sorry.
Okay. Well, I was just elaborating on your reason for it not being a nature sign, because it fits into the effect sign category.
Yeah. So, and what if you could kindly repeat what you said?
Yeah, because you can say that you can put existence of fire as the predicate, explicit predicate of the probandum, and you can put existence of smoke as the sign.
Yeah.
And you can say there's a relationship between them of being, one's being related to the other as the same nature. So that would, could qualify it as a correct nature sign, you see. But because there is, in fact, a common base of being held as the explicit predicate of the probandum in the proof of that, and being the cause of what you've set as the and being a cause of smoke, then that makes it a correct effect sign. Yeah, so that's coming back to me now. But yeah, so just to think a bit about the predicate of the probandum, you see, so they can say fire is a predicate of the probandum, the explicit predicate of the probandum, and fire exists is also the explicit predicate of the probandum. Then you can talk about implicit predicate of the probandum, which we won't do here, but I think they'll come later on a bit. So the word explicit is supposed to, be necessary too. Well, I don't know if you say something like, sound is impermanent because it's a product. So the explicit predicate of the probandum is impermanent. So you might say the implicit predicate of the probandum is momentary, the definition of impermanent, or the implicit predicate of the probandum is not permanent. Or what would we say? The negative one, impermanent. Well, maybe opposite of not impermanent, yeah. So there are differences of opinion about that, exactly what you can say is the explicit predicate of the probandum, what's the implicit predicate of the probandum, but I don't think we should need to go into that now.
Okay, Graham?
Yes?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So you said the existence of fire could possibly be a correct nature sign? No, not that one. The existence of, the existence of fire. And you gave like a very technical reason why it's not. So my question is, I mean, could the existence of fire and the existence of smoke be the same nature?
Yes, yes, that's the point.
You are saying they could.
Saying they are, yeah.
Oh, why?
Smoke is related to this as the same nature as fire,
How?
as existence of fire. Well, think about it. They're both permanent phenomena, and one requires the presence of the other.
I don't get it, but I'll think about it.
Yeah, to the direct to perceive it to which they both appear, if they could appear, they'd appear non-separate. You know, each requiring the other.
But I mean, they appear at different times usually. So how could they appear like non-separate? They are separated by time.
Well, are they? You know, don't you see smoke and fire at the same time?
Sometimes, but not always.
Well, in this particular sign.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more to think about that actually when you talk about it, when you mention it. Existence of fire, existence of smoke, you know. How are they related? Are they related at all? The existence of fire requires the existence of smoke. Sorry, the existence of smoke requires the existence of fire. Yeah. But they can't be cause related. It can't be like effect to cause because both of them are permanent. Yeah, so think about that.
Okay, sorry, Geshe-la, can you just tell me why they're permanent? It's not coming clearly to my mind.
Well, existence itself is permanent, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. But then the existence of fire, I mean.
Existence is a quality that's on fire.
Okay.
Like the, you know, one with fire is permanent. So it's like a permanent quality of fire, yeah. And so
Well, how can it be a permanent quality of fire? Fire is impermanent.
yeah, well, like, how can the selflessness of Jake be a permanent phenomenon?
Okay, but when
Impermanent, right? So there's the selflessness of Jake should be impermanent.
yeah. No, selflessness is never impermanent, yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. So permanent phenomena can have impermanent phenomena can have permanent qualities. So like
Yeah.
being different from pillar is a permanent quality of pot.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
You know, pot can change, but pot's being different from pillar never changes.
So, but is this one of those occasional permanents? Because when the fire disappears, its existence disappears too.
Oh yes, it wouldn't be.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
it's
It's not like okay, cool, yeah, okay.
like when you disappear, the selfness of you disappears. It's like you know, it's dependent on you, but it's a permanent quality. Like fires, you know, pots being different from pillar. Being different from pillar is like some construction that you're putting on pot.
Sure.
Or your own conceptual kind of, you know, it's just a generally characterized phenomenon in this sutra school.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Cool.
So once existence is permanent, then the existence of fire is permanent, the existence of product is permanent, the existence of, you know, water is permanent. Something like you know, that's like I said, what we did say before, the definiendum or the definition of functioning things. See, that's permanent. Because definition is permanent. Functioning things not permanent, but the definition is permanent. You know, it's so like that. Okay, so that's just revising that with respect to the second divisions. So that means there are 5. So there's correct effect sign, which proves the cause direct. Correct effect sign, which proves the preceding cause. Correct effect sign, which proves a particular cause. Correct effect sign, which proves the self-isolative cause. And correct effect sign, which is a means of inferring a causal attribute. So we went through these pretty quickly, so we didn't have much time to think about them last week. There's not much that is said about them, but there are some significant differences between them. So correct effect fine, which proves a cause direct. You know, in Tibetan it says gyu nge instead of ngegyu. Usually you read ngegyu, direct cause, which I think is what it means here, doesn't it? You know, you can look up at the smoke in the sky. So there's fire there. You know, because the effects are direct cause of smoke. Sorry, the smoke is a direct cause of fire. You know, so there's not a long gap. There's not a long gap between the fire and the smoke, is there? So it's like the smoke can be, you know, it's like you say a seed and a sprout, direct effect, direct cause. But even then, you know, just because it is a direct cause, doesn't mean that you know it's quite the same, quite as simple as. Well, they're not just because it's a direct cause. You know, it doesn't sort of clear up all the things you have to think about. Anyway, the example. The first, at the time of stating the subject on the smoky past, fire exists because smoke exists. Smoke. So smoke is a correct effect sign which proves a cause direct. So you can say, well, it is proving a direct cause, but is that really capturing the essence of this one? This is a standard correct effect sign, but you know, the others are quite different from this in the way they work. The subject on the smoky past, fire exists because smoke exists. So in the pervasion, if the smoke is necessarily fire, so smoke is a sign. So, you know, smoke's got to exist only in the similar class, hasn't it? You know, so the similar class is whatever. Similar class is like that which is not empty of fire, right? And the dissimilar class, that which is empty of fire. Smoke is, so, you know, smoke is never empty of fire, in the sense that smoke always, you know, it presupposes fire. So smoke is never empty of fire, in the sense smoke is never there without, you know, fire as its, you know, as its kind of, you know, requirement or its support or something. Yeah, so we think about the pervasion in a slightly different way than with product and impermanent. But you can see if it is just a direct effect, that's not what makes it such a great sign, is it? Because you can say, you know, say you plant, you have a one bean seed, you're growing, you grow bean sprouts on your windowsill or something, you know, in your kitchen. You like growing bean sprouts for making your salads. So then, you know, you put one seed there for once, instead of making a whole bunch of them, you just make one. So on your little dish with your, you know, piece of wet cloth or whatever you use to make your bean sprouts. So you put one bean on there and then it sprouts, doesn't it? So it's on the dish. Sort of what shall we say? So the cause is the bean and the effect. Yeah. The subject on the dish with the bean sprout, it follows that the seed exists, the bean seed exists because the bean sprout exists, right? On your little dish, which contains the bean sprout, it follows that the bean seed exists because the bean sprout exists. What do you say to that, Jimpa?
I would accept.
You accept. The subject on the dish with the sprouting bean on it, it follows seed does not exist because the sprout exists.
Why?
Well, have I explained the situation? You've got a dish with a little bit of cloth, you know, a little bit of water. So you put a bean sprout on there and, you know, 48 hours later, it's made into a bean sprout. So that dish containing the bean sprout, you know, this person who's debating says the subject, the dish with the bean sprout on it, on the dish, that's it, the subject on the dish with the bean sprout in it, it follows a seed exists because the bean sprout exists. The bean seed exists because the bean sprout exists. So you accept.
Yes.
It follows on that subject, on the beans, on the dish with the bean sprout in it, it follows seed does not exist because it is not observed by valid cognition.
The result is not established.
The seed is not observed by valid cognition because the only thing on the dish is that piece of wet cloth and the beans and the bean sprout. You know, we're looking in your kitchen and we're pointing at that example. It's not some sort of vague generalization. It's this real situation. Like when you're climbing the hill, you see the smoke and so, oh, there must be fire on top of the hill. Direct cause, direct effect. So, you know, if the direct effect's there, then the cause of that direct effect must be there, right? Substantial cause or something. So if we put that in another situation, okay, so you've got your bean sprout there. So somebody says, you know, considering on the dish where the bean sprout is sprouted, it follows the seed exists because the bean sprout exists. So if you accept that, then it follows there is no seed on that dish because it's contradicted by direct perception. When we look there is no seed.
There is no seed at the time of the sprout.
Well, that's what we're talking about. Like when we're walking out the path, you know. Of course, you can say, well, there's neither smoke nor fire on the path because, you know, if you go there the next day, there won't be any smoke or any fire. Or if you went there the previous day, there wouldn't be any smoke or any fire. We're talking about this particular moment. We're not talking about for all time. At this time, why isn't it a correct sign then? The subject, you know, on the bean sprout, on the dish with the bean sprout in it, it follows that seed exists because sprout exists. It follows it is a correct sign because it's a correct sign, which is, you know, a correct sign which proves a cause direct.
Yeah, it has to be.
So it is a correct sign. It is not a correct sign because there's no bean, there's no sprout there. I mean, there's no seed, bean seed there. There's only a sprout.
So there would be no effect sign at all because at the time of the effect, there is no further cause.
You understand what I'm talking about, don't you, Yael? You know, you can't say, oh, there must be a seed on that dish because there's a sprout there. You know, just because there's a direct effect there, the correct cause doesn't have to be there.
I agree.
But why isn't it a correct sign then? Because if on the smoky path fire exists because smoke exists is a correct sign. So why isn't it exactly the same?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer.
That's why the syllogism of on the smoky path fire exists might because smoke exists is not a correct sign because there's no pervasion.
It's not a correct sign.
It's not a correct sign, no.
It's a correct sign because it's the thought of the greatly kind and wise Geshe Sutrin Namgyal of Drepung Losling College, no less.
There's the sign, exactly, Drepung.
Then we've got Jake from Oxford University.
I think Oxford's older than Drepung, actually, so...
Oh! Well, I'm older than you then, so I'm right.
Except... No, but we're talking about on the smoky path, fire exists because smoke exists. There's just no pervasion because just because there's lingering smoke, that doesn't mean that fire exists on that smoky path. Just like your example with the seed and the sprout. Just because you can see an effect, there's no pervasion and that the cause exists. Its cause exists. In fact, there's pervasion, it doesn't exist.
So if this smoke was not necessarily fire, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying on the smoky path.
That's the pervasion. The pervasion is the forward pervasion, and you know a counterpart is a counter pervasion. So in that sign, you know, on the subject on the smoky path, it follows there is fire because there's smoke. Is there a counter pervasion? Is there a forward pervasion?
I'd say no.
So then that's tantamount to saying if smoke exists, fire does not necessarily exist.
On the smoky pass, yes, except.
But the counter pervasion doesn't, or the forward pervasion, it doesn't take the subject into account, does it? If you look at the
Well, if it doesn't, what are we proving? We're not just proving abstract theories. We're proving a practical situation where the fire exists on that smoky pass.
Well, it is a practical situation because, you know, this is the way we often operate. There's two people walking up the pass. You know, you can imagine in Tibet, you know, it's a bit cold, but then they see this smoke coming up at the top of the pass that they're climbing towards, and that gives them encouragement. They think, oh yeah, somebody's got a fire going up there. So if we go up there, then we'll perhaps get a cup of tea. You know, we'll be able to light our cigarettes, or, you know, we'll be able to, you know, boil up some of our own tea or something. You know, so it's very much a practically real to them. They see the smoke coming up the smoky pass. They don't say, oh, well, that might be fake smoke, you know, that might be virtual smoke projected by, you know, somebody's kind of film crew, you know, making some sort of.
No, but that's the point then, isn't it? Because on that pass, the predicate is in relation to that subject. It exists on that path.
Yeah, but they can only be a correct sign if the pervasion is established that, you know, fire, if the smoke was necessarily fire. So if you can't prove that, if you can't ascertain that, then you can never become a correct sign for you. Unless you can say, because it's a dependent right, it has to be empty, you cannot transfer it to any subject.
Sure, but if you say that where there is fire, there must necessarily.
If you're not convinced of the pervasion, then you can never be sure that there's any fire anywhere by the sign smoke. You know, unless you see them both with direct perception. But that's not necessary. We don't need to see them both side by side with direct perception, which we often do. You know, we look at a bonfire, there's fire and smoke. So we often see them together, but on those situations where the fire is hidden, because it's, you know, hidden in the trees, or it's hidden over the top of a hill or something, or it's hidden in a house and the smoke coming out the chimney, then, you know, it's not difficult to say, oh, there must be fire in there, man. You know, so we are confident. We do ascertain there's fire just through the presence of smoke. So it's saying that if there is smoke, there's necessarily fire there.
Well, it might be like if wherever there's smoke, there was fire. You could maybe say that.
Well, don't go back to wherever. You know, that's.
Well, this place on the smoky pass.
That's a dodgy one.
There was fire because there is smoke. I'd accept that.
Yeah.
But may I ask a question?
Well, okay, I guess so, yeah.
It's on this subject. I'm a little bit lost. I missed the first bit. I got the wrong syllogism. But here, aren't we saying that it's actually the subject is smoke exists? So for smoke to exist, then
That's the sign.
yes. So fire has to exist. That's what we're saying, isn't it? For smoke to exist in any form, then the subject fire has to exist. Otherwise, without fire, there can be no smoke. Rather than saying, I think what Jake's saying is that the smoke produced from the last moment of fire, smoke exists, but fire no longer exists.
Yeah. So nobody's saying that they have to exist at the same time. Always. But you can see how they exist at the same time often enough for that to be, distinguishable. Like if it was the last puff of smoke from the fire, it would just like go up into the air and vanish, and then the guy say, "Oh, the fire's gone out," right? Even before they got there, or the fire's died down to its coals or something, maybe not gone out. Nobody's saying if there's fire, there has to be smoke. Nobody's saying that.
But we are saying that if there's smoke, there has to be fire. But
Yes.
there's so many cases that's not the case. So how can I get confidence in that?
It's like saying if there's a child, there have to be parents, right? You know, or something like that. Maybe these days with genetic engineering, I don't know, or kind of birth out of test tubes or something. Well, even Dolly the sheep, they had to have a mother. They implanted the whatever it was they implanted. They had to be into a mother's womb, didn't it? So that's still true, you know. So somebody had to give birth to Dolly the sheep, who was like this, whatever it was, genetically engineered sheep, was it? No, that's not the right word. Cloned sheep, yeah. Cloned sheep, yeah. You know, so like if you've got a wooden table, it has to come from the wood. Eventually, has to come from a tree, yeah. So if there's wood, there's necessarily trees. That's all. You know, it's not saying that they have to be at the same time. That's what I'm bringing out with this seed and sprout thing, yeah. So just because it's even direct cause and direct effect doesn't mean it's going to be a correct sign. But somehow the smoke and fire one is a correct sign. That the effect and the cause of acting are occurring close enough together. But yeah, there's plenty of debates around that. But I don't think the solution is to say there's no pervasion. Unless you're from advanced 21st century Oxford, we haven't caught up yet.
No, but I mean, do you get my point, right? I mean, if we're saying somewhere specific, on this smoky pass, there's fire because there's smoke. Fire exists because there's smoke. We're not just saying exists in general, fire must have it, or we're saying fire must have existed, at least, because there's smoke. That I'd accept, yeah, there's pervasion. If there's smoke, there must have existed fire. But we're not saying that, we're saying fire exists, leaving it super open because there's smoke. And to that, I'd have to say no pervasion, you know? It's like you're seeing someone who's got wet hair. They've just had a shower. This person's just had a shower because they have wet hair. You're like, well, no pervasion. They might have just been walking in the rain.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, if there's an apple seed, if there's an apple, there must be an apple tree. You know, if there's a sprout, there must be a seed. You know, it's like if there's leather, there must be a cow. You know, it's not like they have to be at the same time, but one necessitates the other. Or not a cow. That's to be an animal that produces a leather. It doesn't have to be a cow. You know, there's like where the effect necessitates the cause, right?
Yeah,
so
but exists means exists now. That's what it means. If you say existed, is okay, I'd accept. But you're saying exists, that means it exists now.
Well, it exists in its own time. If it exists, it doesn't necessarily have to exist now. So the Olympic Games don't exist.
Well, the Olympic Games do not exist now. No, they don't exist now. No, because they're not happening.
But they exist.
They existed. And they will exist, but at the present they don't. They're not, because they're not happening.
They exist as a concept. They do exist. Like the Olympic Games, they are an institution that exists. They are not like the fire stops existing, but the Olympic Games are held like the games, but then the Olympic Games as an overall concept does continue. But I'm supporting Jacob on this, because I actually was bothering you about this in the Land of Joy. I remember it was about the smoke, and I was saying that there can be all kinds of artificial smoke and all this. And I think that, you know, like maybe in the time when this argument was compiled, there were no film crews producing artificial smoke and such. But these days, there is no more pervasion, because there can be. We don't know if behind the mountain there is a film crew indeed. There is no guarantee whatsoever. In the days back, you know, in Tibet, old Tibet, there was guarantee that there was no film crew there. But these days, you know, so in that sense, even if principally speaking, we can assume that there is fire when we see smoke, there is no 100% guarantee.
Well, all of a sudden, artificial smoke, is it?
Well, I don't know exactly how they produce it.
Is an artificial person a person?
No.
No,
but when we see the smoke, we cannot know if it's smoke or artificial.
I'll give you some artificial gold. You wouldn't take that to be gold, would you? Unless you were a fool. Artificial gold is not gold; it's fake gold.
But unless we investigate, we can be fooled by it if its appearance is so gold-like. You know. That's happening all the time. People who are even experts are buying fake diamonds because they are so good fakes. So
yes, of course, that's when you haven't done the ascertainment. Each of the three modes of the sign's got to be ascertained, and you can be fooled. Yes, of course, we can all be wrong. You know, we go out in the garden, we see a striped rope, and it's because it's dusk, and we are, you know, nervous person. We think, oh, that's a snake, but then we go closer, and it's not a snake. So nobody's saying, well, it's dangerous to go out in the garden because there's a snake, and then people go out and it's only a piece of rope. So that was a wrong conclusion. It's not dangerous to go out of in the garden because there's a snake, because there's only a piece of striped rope. Well, yes, we have, you know, once we get over those initial wrong consciousnesses and distinguish real smoke from fake smoke, then we're back to saying, if there's smoke, there has to be fire.
Yeah, or like Jacob says, there had to like exist some fire previously or now. We don't know if it has existed a minute ago or a second ago, maybe stopped existing, but at least there has been fire existing in the recent past, like very close to this moment, or existing now. Yeah, that's true.
That's right. So you've got to work on it, right? Yeah. Nobody's saying they have to be simultaneous in every, you know, in every moment they exist, but they're sufficiently simultaneous for it to be a practically useful way of determining whether there's fire there or not. And as for Jake, you say, like, the only thing that exists now then, yeah? So then we have to say, when we're investing cause and effect, do you have a cause, Jake? And you have to say no, you know? So there's no cause of Jake, because the cause of Jake doesn't exist now, so it doesn't exist, you know? How can you debate cause and effect? Doesn't Jake just have a cause, yeah?
I have a cause, yeah. I am caused, you know, because I had a cause, yeah.
Yeah,
so my cause existed.
There is no cause of Jake then.
No, there is a cause of Jake.
There isn't a cause of Jake. There was a cause of Jake, but there is no cause of Jake because Jake exists.
Yeah, okay, except
there's no cause of Jake.
Not in the present, no.
How can we investigate reality on that basis?
Well, you can just
how do we make Jake well because there's no cause of his sickness? How do we make Jake, you know, comfortable? Because how do we make Jake well fed? There's no cause of, you know. How can we remove his hunger? Well, we don't know.
There are causes to removing hunger by eating food. Having become full, the causes have ceased. So that state of being full had causes.
Yeah, so the causes
have causes. Precisely speaking, doesn't have causes because those causes have ceased.
Well, there is a cause of Jake, right? It's just that the cause of Jake exists in a different time to Jake.
I'd say there were causes of Jake.
Yeah, so the dependent system is to say, you know, everything exists in its own time. So if you want to debate cause and effect, so then each of them exists in their own time. Yeah, so you say the cause of Jake exists, the effect of Jake exists, but nobody's going to get confused and say, oh, they all have to exist at the same time, just to say they exist.
But so for you, if something existed, it exists.
Yes, I mean, it's an existence.
So the dinosaurs exist.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can find them now. They can be established by valid cognition. They
function.
Then
when somebody's talking, you know, do we mean that we're talking about existing in their own time or existing right now?
We're talking about existing in general.
Then you have to distinguish there. So the dinosaurs exist just as much as we do. It's just they exist in their own time. But then if you say, when I'm talking about existence, I just mean now, then you can change your discourse to say, okay, now we're not talking about existence in general. We're just talking about existence, anything that exists now. So then you make you have to change into understanding the meaning of existence in a different context.
But when we're trying to prove the fire and the smoky past, we're not just trying to prove general existence of fire. We're trying to prove it in a specific context.
Yeah, so that's why I'm bringing up this seed and the sprout and seed one. You see, a seed and a sprout are, direct cause and direct effect. But just because the direct effect is there doesn't mean the direct cause has to be there. Like on the dish on which you sprouted your beans. But in the case of fire on the smoky pass, and people say, oh yeah, there's a fire up there. Not because they can see the fire, because they can see the smoke. It's a perfectly effective, correct sign in the practical world. And in the world of ivory towers of Oxford, you might deny this a correct sign, but people every day in the real world, the working world, signs like that.
In the real world of meaning generalities.
Mr. Graham, what was the one about the seed? You said something about consider the subject sprout. Well, yeah, why does that, can you say that one again, just so I can compare them in my mind?
Yes. So I'm just patterning it on the one in the book. So, you know, it says the subject on the dish with the bean sprout in it. You know, I've given you the situation, I have another context. It follows that bean seed exists because bean sprout exists. So why isn't that a correct effect sign, you know? Because you've got this common locus of the explicit predicate of the random, bean seed, and the cause of the effect, bean sprout. So there's something which is the explicit predicate of the random, common base of the explicit predicate of the random, and cause of bean sprout, and that's bean seed. But of course, there is no bean seed on the dish, because it became a sprout.
Are they not the other way around compared to the fire and smoke one? Consider the subject on the smoky pass. There is smoke because there is fire.
We're not saying that on the smoky pass there is fire because there is smoke.
No, it's that way around. There is fire because there is smoke, yeah.
We don't need to sign to prove this smoke on the smoky pass. We can see that. We need a sign to show there's fire up there.
So what's it saying? Is it saying is or exists in this sprout example? The statement.
Well, if you're using the exists, that's fine. Yeah, on the dish with the bean sprout in it, it follows this the bean seed exists because the bean sprout exists. You can put it like that.
Yeah, that's what I was just checking. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have the similar pattern, maybe.
So but then the point is that sprout in that particular proof is a correct effect sign, but not of a cause direct, but of a preceding cause.
Well, we could go to the second of the 5 types of correct sign then. Are you thinking of that?
Yes.
You've been looking ahead to the next one, have you?
I've read the next line, yeah.
Yes, exactly. See, so the second one, at the time of stating the subject, the smoke in the sky, it is preceded by its cause, earlier fire, because it is smoke. Yeah. So you say the bean sprout is preceded by its cause, you know, the bean seed. Yeah. You know, so the bean sprout and seed one is much more patterning like the second one.
Mm.
Yeah. But even though, even though the seed is a direct cause of the sprout, it's still not enough to make it, you know, an effect sign which proves the cause direct.
Mm.
So if you say, oh, why don't we translate it as a direct cause? Mm. You know, in Tibetan, the 2 words are just the other way around. Instead of saying direct cause, it's just cause direct. Instead of saying yu nge, instead of saying ngugyu, it says yu nge. So not every sign which is a relationship between direct cause and direct effect is of the first type. So that's what I'm trying to point out, really.
Sometimes nge can mean principle, nge shen, nge tapawa, the main one or the real one.
Yes. So I was a bit hesitant. How do I translate that? Mm. But I think in my Tibetan book, you know, the one I've been getting the debates about, it does more specifically say, well, I said a ngosu. I don't know. I can't remember because I haven't got the book here. I forgot it. But yeah.
Geshe Graham.
But there's something like between the cause and effect of fire and smoke that isn't there between, you know, the seed and the sprout. But not, and it's not true of all smoke. As I'm quite willing to admit that. Yes, Hannele.
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't get why this bean sprout is different from fire and smoke. I mean, they are both direct cause and effect.
Yes.
So I don't get it. If they don't have to exist at the same time, well, they can't exist at the same time, cause and effect, then why doesn't it work with the bean sprout dish?
Well, let's look at the second example here in the book, right? At the time of stating the subject, the smoke in the sky, it is preceded by its cause earlier fire because it is smoke. Smoke, for instance. You know, so that's a bit more like the seed and the sprout one, isn't it? The subject, the sprout in the dish on the kitchen shelf, the windowsill. It is preceded by its cause earlier seed because it is bean sprout. On the bean sprout dish, on the windowsill. Sorry, you have to say the bean sprout, don't you? The subject, the bean sprout, on the bean sprout dish on the windowsill, it is preceded by its cause earlier seed because it is bean sprout. So then in that sense, bean sprout is, you know, a correct effect sign. But it's not saying it exists, is it? It is preceded by its earlier cause. So it's a different setup, you know, but it still works. But when you see the smoke and the fire simultaneous on the smoky pass, it's not like that fire is the cause of that smoke, is it? That fire isn't the cause of that smoke. The fire the fire down here is not the cause of kind of, you know, the smoke that's billowing up at that time, because the smoke that's billowing up is only an effect of previous fire. It's not effect of the fire that's simultaneous with it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, right? But this one and this sign, you know, the smoke is actually, that smoke you're talking about is actually the effect of the fire that you're talking about. It's not just fire and smoke in general that cause and effect. But this is like more specific. This particular smoke in the sky is must have been a cause of some other fire, but some preceding fire. So it's making a bit of a subtle distinction there. But still, you know, there is some smoke which is simultaneous to fire, you know, commonly enough in the world that even people who've never been to Oxford, you know, never even passed, you know, their primary school exams, they can still figure that one out, you know. You know, they're just cowherds in Tibet. They've never been educated. They don't even read and write or anything. They might just know a few Tara prayers and that's it. But they can be climbing up them paths with their sheep and stuff. And they say, oh, come on, let's go. There's fire up there. We've got to get warm. And it's freezing, you know. And so
they could be wrong, no? They could be so wrong about that.
Of course. Yeah, so well, that's all right. People make mistakes. Yes, they do.
But, I mean, if you see smoke, do you necessarily infer there's fire? I mean, honestly.
Fire necessitates, the existence of smoke necessitates the existence of fire.
Or in that spot, on that pass.
They were saying that. I mean, we're not saying that.
Yeah, well, we're trying to prove something, aren't we? On that pass, there is fire.
Yes. Well, if you see smoke billowing out of a forest, you know, you say, oh yeah, some guys have lit a fire in there. Of course.
Have lit, exactly. Have lit. Yeah. That I'd accept that.
They have lit a fire, so it means if the smoke's still coming out, the fire's still going, isn't it?
No pervasion.
Well, what are you talking about? The last tiny second of smoke? You know, suddenly they cover the fire with a big sort of sheet of metal or something.
Could have gone out an hour ago and it's smouldering for hours. There could be absolutely no fire left.
If the smoke's still coming up, it's still fire, isn't it?
Smouldering, lingering.
Yeah, well,
lingering smoke.
Charcoal, you know, the fire of what? Is it a barbecue? That's still fire. It's not producing any smoke, but it's still fire. It's only smouldering coals. Why isn't it fire? It's hot and burning.
But okay, but you could still have lingering smoke without even hot coals.
Yeah, so that last moment of smoke, yeah, that's extremely significant. So you've got to say, you know, why that's not a correct sign. And there's a debate exactly about that, which we've, you know, touched on already, but we're not getting very far. I was going to go through these 5 and then go to those debates, which were printed for you, and somebody sweated blood to translate it for them in time of this class. And if we don't get through to them, they'll be disappointed. It did hard work. So there is a debate to bring out this issue, you see.
Oh, sorry.
But when you bring out the issue, if there is smoke, there's necessarily fire. Oh yeah, then there's plenty to think about. There's the one on the smoky path, fire exists because smoke exists. There's a second one, the smoke in the sky is preceded by its cause early fire because it is smoke. And then there's another one, which is the fake one, this is similitude of a correct sign. And how do you distinguish between those three? If it just says, if there's smoke, there's not necessarily fire, or if smoke exists, fire doesn't necessarily exist. You're dismissing a pervasion which, all those great masters from, Geshe Gelsen backwards to the Buddha himself have all accepted as a correct pervasion, including even those non-Buddhist schools. They've all accepted as a correct pervasion. But those blighters in Oxford, we were here. We were here before Draper and University. We were right. Disagree. No, I'm joking. Because when Nagarjuna gets going on cause, when Nagarjuna gets on the relationship between cause and effect, he's got a whole different trip going. The Sautrantikas think they've got this really good system worked out, and it's very impressive. I was impressed anyway when I studied cause and effect with the collected topics. Oh yeah, there's direct cause, indirect cause, substantial cause, contributory condition. They have some really kind of quite helpful, understandings of cause and effect. When you debate about them, it's like, oh yeah, things start to feel, this is the impermanence that they're talking about. Just glimpses of, But then Nagarjuna comes along, he kind of smashes it all to pieces. So he's got a whole lot of other things to say, Does the effect arise from an existent cause, or does it arise from a non-existent cause, Does this arise from an existent seed? Or does it arise from a non-existent seed? Or alternatively, is it a non-existent seed that produces a sprout, or an existent seed that produces a sprout? And so there's a whole load of debates going on as well there. But you don't get the point of them, I think, unless you study these lower schools views beforehand. And if you said to Nagarjuna, if there's smoke, is a necessary fire, if he was in the right mood, talking about conventional truth, I think he'd say, well, I accept that. On the ultimate level, no, he said, on the ultimate level, there is no fire, there's no smoke, there's no arising, but on the conventional level, just mere, imputation by, sort of what we take to be the worldly view. Yeah, the worldly view is that if there is fire, if there's smoke, there's necessarily fire. So Nagarjuna Chandragiri would accept. So you're batting against a big team there.
So if Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti were walking up that hill and they saw smoke, and they therefore infer, there must be fire there on that pass, then for you, and then they went up there and then there was no fire, for you they'd be right because they're Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti.
Well, if they went up there, by the time they got there, the fire had gone out. Who'd be surprised? There was fire when they were looking up there, but by the time they got there, it gone out. Oh, it wasn't fire, it was a film crew projecting fake smoke on a screen of mist or something. Well, it wasn't smoke at all. It was just fake smoke, and nobody expects there to be fire because there's fake smoke on top of the pass. Yeah, okay, well, let's go through the last two. I don't know, some guys wanted to ask some questions as well. Anyway, we're not going to get through these last three now, but never mind. We've got to bring out our questions, and you're very welcome. And I'm not trying to boss people around. People have got to be persuaded by reasoning, not just kind of claims about the mighty status of Nagarjuna. Anyway, the third, at the time of stating the subject, the sense direct perceiver apprehending form, the condition of it exists, which is other than its dominant condition, its immediately preceding condition, because it is not produced merely by its dominant condition and immediately preceding condition being complete, and it is occasionally produced. Yeah, so this is the three conditions producing something like an eye consciousness. So maybe this, so we haven't really got time to go into it, but well, we can do this one at least. The subject, the sense, direct, perceived, or apprehending form, a condition of it exists, which is other than its dominant condition, its immediately preceding condition, because it is not produced merely by its dominant condition, and immediately preceding condition to be complete, and it is occasionally produced. But it depends if you know what these are. The sense, direct, perceived, or apprehending form, a condition of it exists, which is other than its dominant condition. So what we're positing in this dominant condition in this context? Yael. Sense, direct, apprehending form.
The observed object condition?
What is the dominant condition? Posit the dominant condition of the sense, direct, perceived, apprehending form. Let's say an eye consciousness.
The uncommon empowering condition? I sense power?
Yeah. So
sense
dominant condition, empowering condition, same thing. And I think in this context, we understand uncommon dominant condition. So that would be the I sense power, right? And what's the immediately preceding condition?
The consciousness the minute before, the moment before.
Preceding consciousness, yeah. So just from those two, you don't get an eye consciousness. So what else do you need?
The observed object condition?
Yeah, so that could be, the color blue or something, or the shape square or something like that. Yeah, so it's just a way of, plotting out something that if we have these two causes, it doesn't happen. But if we have this cause as well, it does happen. So it's a way of sort of establishing there is another cause apart from the ones you've identified in the causal collection required to produce some phenomena. So I was the one I thought of was like when we have fire. If you have a little piece of candle burning, and then you put a glass jar over it, the candle very quickly goes out. So you think, oh, you have fuel, which is the wax, and you have the lighted match, which lights you have the light, to help the fuel burn. So why you have a fire then, or you have your flame. But just those two on their own won't produce a flame. If you cover it so there's no oxygen, then you don't need it. Then you don't get the flame that you want. So there has to be oxygen, and this third sort of cause has got to be there, even though you don't really kind of see it so easily as a match or as the wax and the candle. So just like that. So with these two causes, it doesn't happen. So it does happen. It is occasionally produced, but just by bringing these two together, it's not enough. It won't happen. It doesn't happen. Why won't it happen? We bring in the causes together. We haven't brought all the causes you need, so you need this other cause as well. So this is just establishing the necessity of the complete collection of causes, and so you can make a correct effect sign if you think about it, kind of in that situation too. But some guys wanted to ask some questions. They said, so maybe we should just have to stop there. I haven't got very far, but never mind. That's all right. We've got to discuss these things. Did you want to ask a question, Paul? This is about something else?
Yeah, we've been debating exists solely within permanent and solely exists within permanent.
So this is forward pervasion?
Yeah. But we've taken it here. We're trying to make sure that we're not inventing our own system here. And we're not looking at the kind of definition there precisely, but we're taking a bit from it. So what exists solely means and solely exists, and which that within permanent, sort of taken out from that definition, but we're not relating it to the definition as a whole. It's just exists solely within permanent and solely exists within permanent.
Yeah, so Paul is asking about the forward pervasion, I guess. So he doesn't want to ask about the whole definition, but it's probably good to remind ourselves of the definition, right? So yeah, so once we've got the sign is established on the subject here, okay, we're confident that, sound is a product, for instance, but then we want the pervasion if it's a product's necessarily impermanent. So that's, how do we kind of think about that? Well, using the language of the definition we've been given. So it just says to remind us, by the person for whom it has become the second mode of the sign in the proof of sound as impermanent, it is ascertained as existent solely in the similar class in the proof of sound as impermanent. So this is on page 14, by the way. Okay, so we can just think, oh, is the product necessarily impermanent? Yeah, but if we use the language of this definition, it gives us, more kind of another way of thinking about it, at least, to try and get it more sort of, confident or kind of sort of, certain in our heads that what we have to think about. So, by the person for whom it has become the second mode of the sign in the proof of sound as impermanent. So there's got to be this person who's ascertaining it, but Paul's not asking about that. It is ascertained as existent solely in the similar class in the proof of sound as impermanent. So what is the similar class? Posit the similar class in the proof of sound as impermanent.
That which is in accordance with the mode of proof not empty of impermanence in the proof of sound as impermanent.
Well, that's the definition of similar class, yeah. So, and then it says it and impermanent are equivalent. Yeah, so okay. So we did basically deal with the impermanent. When it says a similar class in the proof of sounds impermanent, what we got to think about is just impermanent. So you're saying, what's the difference between existence solely with impermanent, let's say, and solely existent with impermanent?
Yeah.
So you just want to know the difference between those two?
Yeah, we've got 4p, but we don't know if it actually makes a difference then if you say in accordance, if it is in, just that, exists solely with impermanent and solely exists with impermanent.
So how many points between those two?
Well, I've got 4p, but it was...
Good way of thinking about it, yeah. Excellent. Well, existence solely in the similar class.
Sorry.
It means...
Sorry, when you say in the similar class, is there a difference between exists solely in the similar class with impermanent to just exist solely with impermanent? This is one of our confusions. Because we've kind of started with exist solely with impermanent, but whether or not that's the same as saying exist solely with the similar class as impermanent.
Solely in the similar class.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same as just exist solely with impermanent.
Exist solely in the similar class. Well, give us something that you think exists solely in the similar class and the proof of sounds impermanent.
I say product exists. Oh, we could say exists. We could say risen from effort exists solely.
Risen from effort exists solely in the similar class and the proof of sounds impermanent. And give us something which exists solely with impermanent.
Product.
And what about arisen from effort?
So exists solely again would be
arisen from effort.
Yeah, arisen from effort. Solely exists with impermanent product.
Well, wait a minute. Just step by step there. So exists solely. What does that mean to you then? It exists only. It exists only in the similar class. It exists only in impermanent.
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
so only in that one is like excluding it from existing in the dissimilar class, isn't it? When they said it exists only it exists only with impermanent, it means that it doesn't exist with permanent.
Yeah, it cannot be found in the dissimilar class.
Can't be found in the dissimilar class, yeah. So out of the two, the dissimilar class and the similar class are always, completely like directly contradictory. Yeah, so there's no third possibility. So that if it exists solely in the similar class, it exists solely with impermanent, then every manifestation of it has got to be has got to be sort of on the impermanent side, doesn't it? So whatever is it has got to be impermanent.
Yeah.
And if it itself is impermanent, it'll also be in the similar class. Yeah, so that you can see this like something where all the things which are it, you know, they're all in the impermanent category, aren't they? And then if it itself is impermanent, then obviously it's no problem about it going in impermanent category too. But there are some things which, you know, everything which is it is impermanent, but it itself is not impermanent. Have you considered phenomena like that, Jakob? Everything which is it is impermanent, but it is not impermanent.
Yeah, definition of functional thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
or they often give is instant of product. Yeah? So you can have something where, you know, it exists solely in the similar class. So then, you know, there's then the other one is like it solely exists in the similar class. So that's the other one, right? It solely exists in the similar class. So that's a bit more of an unusual use of the word solely than what we used to in ordinary language. But what does that mean to you then? It solely exists in a similar class.
It means that if it is impermanent, it is necessarily it.
Yeah, it exists in all the similar class. That's basically. Yeah. No.
Yeah, this is how to spell it out. My reasoning at the moment is that because if it's impermanent, it's necessarily it. So I posit something like product.
Yeah.
Object.
Product exists solely in the similar class, and the proof sounds impermanent because it exists solely with impermanent. That means it exists. There's no impermanent which hasn't got the quality of being a product.
So it solely exists.
Yes, a product solely exists with impermanent.
Yeah, it's never non-existent in it with any impermanent.
May I clarify something?
Yeah.
Did we say that is the definition of impermanent? Sorry.
Momentary.
Sorry.
Momentary.
Momentary. I'm thinking the definition of momentary phenomena is that that is permanent, but does it exist solely with impermanent? Because if it is that, it's impermanent, but like one with pot exists solely with impermanent.
So what's your subject again? I didn't get the first bit,
Okay,
sorry.
so pot exists solely with impermanent because pot is impermanent.
Pot exists solely with impermanent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that to me means, yeah, all pots are impermanent. You never find a pot that's kind of outside the impermanent category.
So what if we change the subject from pot to one with pot?
Mm-hmm.
One with pot exists solely with impermanent because if it is one with pot, it's necessarily impermanent.
Yeah.
But one with pot is not.
One with pot exists solely in the similar class and proof of sounds impermanent. Pot because it exists solely with impermanent. Yeah.
Even though the subject one with pot is permanent.
Yeah. That's my idea. What do you say, Anila? Are you listening? Not following the discussion, maybe. Anila. No.
means like particularity of product, instance of product.
Is that what particular means, instance?
Yeah, instance and particular are the same. So instance of product, right? Instance of product does not exist in the dissimilar class in the proof of sounds impermanent. A dissimilar class. Instance of product, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
It does not exist in the dissimilar class and the proof of sounds impermanent. I'm talking a dissimilar class now. Yeah, because if it is a product, it's necessarily in the similar class.
Mm-hmm.
But instance of product itself is the dissimilar class. Instance of product itself is permanent. Instance of product itself is not impermanent. So instance of product is the dissimilar class in the proof of sounds impermanent, but it does not exist in the dissimilar class in the proof of sounds impermanent. So you want to write that down? I can tell you afterwards.
Yeah, well, we can write it down afterwards.
Yeah. So those are my little I've got one for the similar class, one for the dissimilar class, but don't tell you.
And there's no difference when we say exists solely with impermanent and exists solely in the similar class with impermanent.
Yeah, because similar class and the proof of sounds impermanent and impermanent are mutually inclusive. Yeah, they're just equivalent. Mm-hmm. So if it exists in one, it exists in the other. If it is one, it is the other. So they're the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's tricky to figure these things out, but keep trying. Hannele, was that?
Very short clarification. So is this a correct sign? Pot is impermanent because it is one with pot.
Pot is impermanent.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's not a correct sign personally, but you can say, well, if it's one with pot, it's necessarily pot, right? And if it's not a pot, it's necessarily not one with pot. And what's the property of the subject? The subject pot, it is one with pot. So you think, oh well, you've got the what do you call it? The property of the subject's all right, isn't it? Pot is one with pot, and the pervasion's all right. If it's one with pot, it's necessarily a pot, and if it's not a pot, it's necessarily not one with pot. So you think the pervasions are all right. So you think that's a correct sign?
Permanent. I mean, isn't it impermanent? The pervasion.
What did you say?
Pot is impermanent.
Sorry, have I got something wrong? Yeah. Sorry, pot is impermanent because it's one with pot. So if it's one with pot, it's necessarily impermanent. Yeah. And if it's not impermanent, it's necessarily not one with pot. So you might think, well, you've got your pervasions sorted out, your forward and your reverse pervasions, and the subject is the sign's established on the subject. So what's the problem? Why isn't it the correct sign? But there's a bit more to it than that, isn't it? You see, because there's got to be somebody who's saying, well, because pot is one with pot, that means it must be impermanent. But is this anybody who thinks like that? How is one with pot? How is realizing pot is one with pot going to help you realize it's impermanent? The sign should contain a clue which gives you the impetus to think, oh well, so it must be impermanent then. Like, oh, it's arisen from causes. That means, once you've thought about the last moment of a butter lamp and all that, how it has got to be impermanent. It's got to have the nature of impermanence as soon as anything is produced from causes. So the sign is helping you to realize impermanence. But how does one with pot, how does knowing one with pot is one with pot, how does that help you to realize impermanence? So it's useless as a sign for impermanence. So that's why in these signs it says that, and there has to be a person who thinks that, a person who, having realized the three modes, it's helping them to, they always posit these correct signs in realistic situations, not just theory. Oh yes, the forward pervasion, reverse pervasion, and the property of the subject. So in fact, we'd say in that sign that the forward pervasion not established and the reverse pervasion not established. But can you extract that from the definition? Or even, yeah, well, even the property of the subject, you know, because there's got to be this person who's wondering, you know. But pod is impermanent because it's one with pod. Well, how does that help me to realize impermanence? So no, not a correct sign, but good question. It's definitely a good question. Okay, we stop there. We've got a bit late tonight, but not very late. So thanks for listening. You know, everybody's really trying to figure these things out, which is great, you know. And we can have disagreements. That's fine too, you know.